Maya had always dreamed of living in Korea. Ever since she watched her first K-drama, she imagined herself walking through the neon-lit streets of Seoul, sipping bubble tea and making lifelong friends who would embrace her like a long-lost sister. She pictured a school filled with polite students, romantic encounters in the rain, and dramatic moments that ended with heartfelt apologies. Reality, however, hit her the moment she arrived. She stepped out of Incheon Airport into the sharp autumn air, dragging her suitcase as she followed Mrs. Park, the woman who had agreed to host her for a year. The Parks lived in a cozy apartment in Seoul with two children, Jisoo, a girl her age, and Minho, her older brother. Jisoo greeted her politely, but with the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Minho barely looked up from his phone. "Come in," Mrs. Park said. "Dinner will be ready soon." Maya tried to shake off the uneasy feeling in her stomach. Maybe they were just shy. Maybe she was expecting too much too soon. The first few days were awkward, but manageable. She tried to bond with Jisoo, but the girl was distant, answering questions with one-word responses. Minho, on the other hand, was indifferent, treating her like a shadow in the house. The only time he spoke to her was when he muttered, "Don't touch my stuff," after catching her admiring a set of books in the living room. Then school started, and things went from awkward to unbearable. Maya was the only foreigner in her class. The students stared, whispered, and giggled whenever she walked past. The teacher was kind, but often ignored her struggles, assuming she would adjust soon. During lunch, she hesitated, unsure where to sit. When she finally approached a group of girls, they exchanged glances before one of them said, "Sorry, this seat is taken." Every day the isolation weighed heavier on her. One afternoon, while walking home, she overheard Jisoo talking to her friends. "I don't know why she's here. She acts like she's in a drama, but this is real life." Maya's heart sank. This wasn't a K-drama. There was no charming love interest waiting to rescue her. No dramatic scene that would suddenly change everything. This was real life, and she was on her own. Maya walked home that day in silence, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Jisoo's words echoed in her head, louder than the traffic, louder than her own thoughts. She acts like she's in a drama, but this is real life. By the time she reached the apartment, she had made up her mind. No more hoping for a magical turnaround. If she was going to survive this year, she had to toughen up. Dinner was the usual quiet affair. Mr. Park was working late. Mrs. Park was scrolling through her phone between bites, and Jisoo and Minho sat across from Maya, barely acknowledging her presence. She cleared her throat. "School was interesting today." Jisoo didn't look up. Minho, as usual, said nothing. Mrs. Park gave a small nod. "That's good. You will get used to it." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. "Will I?" She pushed her rice around her plate, pretending she wasn't losing her appetite. The next day at school, things got worse. During lunch, she finally found an empty table in the corner and sat down. She had barely opened her lunchbox when she heard hushed laughter behind her. Turning around, she saw a group of students looking at her, their phones out. Maya's heart pounded. She reached for her own phone and saw a new message in the class group chat, a chat she had never been added to but somehow found her way into. A picture of her sitting alone. Caption: Main character energy, but no supporting cast. Heat rushed to her face. She wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. Instead, she forced herself to keep eating. If she showed any weakness, they'd only laugh harder. By the time she got home, she was drained. She didn't even bother greeting Jisoo or Minho when she walked in. She just went straight to her room. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. This was supposed to be my big adventure. What happened? A knock at the door startled her. She sat up as Minho leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "You good?" he asked. It was the first time he had spoken to her without annoyance in his voice. Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. Yeah." Minho gave a small nod, then hesitated. "Jisoo's friends are kind of mean. Just ignore them." Maya let out a bitter laugh. Easier said than done. Minho studied her for a second before sighing. Yeah, it is. Then, without another word, he walked away. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maya stayed up late that night, repeating the words in her head. Gyeoyo, Gyeoyo, get lost. 뭐라고? 뭐라고? What did you just say? 그만해. 그만해. Stop it. The next morning, she left for school with a new determination. During break, she walked past a group of girls whispering. One of them, a girl named Yuna, smirked and said, "She probably thinks she's the main character." Maya stopped. She turned to face them and, in her clearest voice, said, Murago? Murago? Yuna's eyes widened. The other girls exchanged looks. You speak Korean? Yuna scoffed, but there was hesitation in her voice. A little, Maya replied. Then, before walking away, she added, Jojo! Gasps. A few students nearby snickered. Maya didn't look back, but inside her heart raced. It was a small victory, but it was hers. That evening, Maya expected Jisoo to say something about what happened at school. But Jisoo barely looked at her during dinner. Minho, however, was watching her with amusement. So, I heard you told Yuna to get lost, he said. Mrs. Park looked up, surprised. Maya, you said that? Maya hesitated. I just defended myself. Jisoo finally spoke. You think saying one word changes everything? They'll just come at you harder. Maya frowned. So, what? I should just let them keep pushing me around? Jisoo dropped her chopsticks and stood up. Just don't make it worse. She walked off, leaving an awkward silence behind. Maya clenched her fists. Why did Jisoo seem almost angry? Minho sighed. Ignore her. She's just... He stopped himself. Anyway, nice job today. It wasn't much, but coming from Minho, it felt like another small win. The next day, Maya walked into class and found a note on her desk. You think you're one of us now? Let's see how long you last. She looked up and saw Yuna watching her, smirking. Maya exhaled slowly, then lifted her head and met Yuna's gaze. The other girl smirked, tilting her head as if daring Maya to react. Maya didn't look away. She held Yuna's stare for a long moment, before calmly crumpling the note in her fist and shoving it into her bag. She refused to let them see her break, but her hands were shaking. At lunch, she debated whether to eat in the classroom or try the cafeteria again. Just as she was about to leave, Jisoo walked past her desk without a word, heading toward her usual group. Maya clenched her jaw. Of course. She didn't care. When she finally entered the cafeteria, she barely had time to react before she felt a foot hook around her ankle. Her tray tilted, her food flew, and the next thing she knew, she was on the floor, kimchi and rice splattered across her uniform. Laughter erupted. Oh my God, did you see that? Someone giggled. Maybe she should go back to watching dramas instead of living in one. Maya's face burned, her hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream, to cry, to fight back. But she couldn't even move. Then a voice cut through the noise. Yeah. Silence fell over the cafeteria. Maya turned her head in shock. Minho. He was standing by the entrance, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He stepped forward, his sharp gaze sweeping over the students. Seriously? This is what you all do for fun? His tone was casual, but there was an edge to it, one that made people shift uncomfortably. Yuna rolled her eyes. Relax, Appa. It was just a joke. Minho tilted his head. Funny, I don't see her laughing. Maya's breath caught in her throat. He was defending her? Yuna scoffed but didn't say anything. Minho sighed. Nugurado chiweo, bogi sileo. Someone clean this up. I don't want to see it. Almost immediately, a few students scrambled to pick up Maya's spilled tray. Yuna glared at Minho but didn't argue. Maya slowly stood up, still in shock. Minho met her eyes. You okay? She swallowed hard and nodded. Without another word, he turned and left the cafeteria. Maya stood frozen for a moment, then walked out, her uniform still stained, her head held high. For the first time, the whispers weren't about her being pathetic. They were about Minho, and that scared her more than anything. Maya stormed into the apartment, throwing her bag onto the floor. The stain on her uniform was starting to dry, and the smell of kimchi clung to her clothes. She wanted to scream, to demand why. Why was this happening? Why was Jisoo letting it happen? And why? Why did Minho suddenly care? She barely made it to her room before Jisoo spoke. You should change. Her voice was neutral, but there was something else beneath it. Maya spun around. That's all you have to say? Jisoo blinked. What do you want me to say? I don't know, maybe, hey, I'm sorry my friends are horrible to you? Or, wow, Maya, that was awful. Are you okay? Jisoo sighed, rubbing her temples. Look, I told you to just keep your head down. Maya let out a sharp laugh. Right, because that's worked so well so far. Jisoo's expression hardened. You don't get it. This isn't a K-drama where the bullied girl suddenly wins everyone over. You're different, and that means they're not going to stop. Maya's chest tightened. Then why don't you stop them? Jisoo hesitated, just for a second. Then she turned away. Maya clenched her fists. Fine. Thanks for nothing. She slammed her door shut. Maya couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment in the cafeteria, the laughter, the stares, the way Minho had stepped in like he had some authority over them, and then Jisoo, her silence, her refusal to take her side. Around midnight, she stepped onto the balcony, needing air. The city stretched out before her, glowing with neon lights and moving cars. It should have been beautiful, but right now it just felt cold. Can't sleep? She turned. Minho was leaning against the railing, hands in his hoodie pocket. Maya crossed her arms. What are you doing? Minho smirked. I live here. She rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. He sighed, looking out at the skyline. Figured you'd be overthinking. Maya hesitated before asking, Why did you do that? In the cafeteria. Minho didn't answer right away. Then with a shrug he said, It was pathetic. Maya stiffened. Gee, thanks. He gave her a sideways glance. Not you, them. She blinked. Minho sighed. Look, I'm not some hero. I just don't like watching people gang up on someone who can't fight back. Maya frowned. I can fight back. Then do it. The words hung between them. Minho turned to leave, but paused. And next time, don't let them see you shake. Maya watched him go, his words settling in her chest. Maya watched Minho disappear into the apartment, his words echoing in her mind. Then do it. She tightened her grip on the railing, staring out at the endless city lights. Tomorrow, everything would change. Inside, Minho lay on his bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He had no reason to care, no reason to get involved. But the look in Maya's eyes, the way she refused to break, stuck with him,